statement.
Yeah.
All right, my name is John Boone. I'm a Harris County Criminal Law Hearing Officer. You're here because you've been accused of committing a crime in Harris County, Texas. First thing I'm going to do is read you your rights. You have the right to retain counsel, that means hire a lawyer. You have the right to request the appointment of counsel if you're indigent and cannot afford to hire your own lawyer. You have the right to remain silent. You're not required to make any statements, and any statements you make can be used against you. You have the right to have an attorney with you during interviews with peace officers or attorneys representing the state. You have the right to terminate, to end such an interview at any time you choose. You have the right to an examining trial for so long as you have not been indicted by a grand jury. Do you understand these rights? What I'm going to do next is to conduct a probable cause hearing in your case. I'm going to tell you what you're charged with, what court you're assigned to, and what the name of the judge is. And the prosecutor, the gentleman on the screen behind me, will read from a sworn written affidavit of what you are accused of having done. Now, before we get started with the hearing, let me point out two things. This isn't a trial. I'm not going to find you guilty based on what the police claim you did. I'll only be deciding if there's enough probable cause to continue to hold you in custody for now. Understand? Okay. If I find that there's probable cause, you'll be going to another court, the court where your case is assigned, to face the charge, and you'll have a right to a trial in that court. If I find probable cause, I'll consider you for a bond. I'll also decide if you're eligible for a personal bond. If you're eligible for a personal bond, I'll let you know. I'll base my decision on information that has been provided to me by the Harris County Pretrial Services Agency, a sheet of paper, the facts given to me by the prosecutor, the nature of the offense, your criminal history if you have any, and information given to me by an assistant public defender if you choose to be represented by the public defender's office at this hearing. If you consent, I will appoint the public defender, in this case Mr. Dan Kundiger, to represent you in this hearing, whether or not you are indigent. But you should be aware that this public defender will not continue to represent you when the hearing is over. If you request appointed counsel later and are found to be indigent, another lawyer would be appointed to represent you in any trial or plea on your charge. I'll be asking you if you're requesting a court-appointed lawyer in the court where your case is assigned. If you're requesting a court-appointed lawyer, I'll send that request to the judge at the court where your case is assigned. When you get to court, you'll fill out a written request, and if the judge appoints you a lawyer, you get a lawyer on that same day. And I'm required to ask if you're a United States citizen. You'll hear me ask you that. All right, so Mr. Black, you're charged in the 176th District Court, Judge Nikita Harmon, with the capital felony of capital murder of a person under 10 years of age. We're now going to hear the probable cause. If there is probable cause, hear the state's rendition of probable cause.
Your Honor, on December the 30th, 2018, homicide investigators with the Harris County Sheriff's Office were assigned to investigate the capital murder of complainant Jazmine Barnes, a 7-year-old female. Homicide investigators spoke with other officers who had made the initial scene of the shooting. A Deputy Peace stated that he responded to the northbound main lanes of the 5100 block of East Sam Houston Parkway north in Harris County in reference to a shooting. Upon his arrival at the scene, he learned from the complainant's mother, LaPortia Washington, that her daughter, a 7-year-old, had been shot while riding as a passenger in a silver Dodge Avenger, and that North Channel EMS had responded to the scene and pronounced the 7-year-old child complainant deceased at the scene. The deputy also stated that 2 other children who had been in the car with the complainant reported that a red truck had been driving next to them when they were shot at on the southbound feeder road near the Walmart, and believed that the shots came from the red truck. The deputy told the homicide investigator that the mother of the complainant, Ms. Washington, continued southbound on the feeder road until reaching the intersection with Wood Forest. Then U-turned under Beltway 8 and began driving northbound, entering the main lanes of the Beltway. She continued northbound, hoping to go to a hospital until her car became disabled due to gunfire striking the front left tire. The deputy told the homicide investigators that others, law enforcement officers, responded to the southbound feeder location and crime scene units as well, and recovered a total of 8 spent shell casings at the scene of the shooting. The shell casings were scattered along the right lane of the feeder for approximately 400 feet, consistent with someone firing a weapon from a moving vehicle. Homicide investigators examined the complainant's vehicle and observed multiple projectile strikes that were from multiple angles, also consistent with the shooter firing from multiple angles. On December 31st, homicide detectives spoke with a Dr. Melissa Blessing, a pathologist with the Harris County Medical Examiner's Office, who performed an autopsy on the complainant and stated that the complainant died from a gunshot wound to the head that was and that resulted in her death, that was ruled as a homicide. Harris County Sheriff's Office homicide investigators released advisories on the case and requested the public's assistance in identifying the suspects in the case. Sheriff Ed Gonzalez stated that he began directly receiving confidential tips by email from an anonymous source, and that the source identified the suspect who shot the complainant by name and as a black male, referred to by the initials LW. The source stated that LW was in the car with another male identified as EB, later determined to be this defendant. The source said that the suspects thought the complainant's vehicle was some other person's vehicle that they had seen earlier in the night, and that they shot the car by mistake. The source said that they did not realize the vehicle they had shot into was the complainant's vehicle until seeing it on the news later in the day. The source stated that LW was admitting to committing the murder. Sheriff Gonzalez stated that the source continued to communicate with Sheriff Gonzalez, further identified EB as Eric, and stated that he was the driver of the suspect vehicle. The source stated that the suspect vehicle was not a red pickup as originally thought, and that Eric, or EB, was driving a rental vehicle of unknown description. Homicide investigators and others were able to identify LW by full name through Harris County jail records, and the confidential source identified EB as having a social media page on Instagram under an identified name. The officers reviewed and found EB's, this defendant's, Instagram page, identifying him as Eric Black. On January the 5th of 2019, homicide investigators were alerted through radio transmissions that Harris County Patrol deputies had stopped a gray-colored Kia that this defendant, Eric Black, was driving after observing him make a lane change without signaling. Officers traveled to the location of the stop at the intersection of Wood Forest and Beltway 8. They observed a deputy who had conducted the traffic stop, and it made the initial contact with the defendant, who indicated to homicide investigators that asked the defendant for proof of insurance on his vehicle, and that when he opened the glove box, a plastic bag with what appeared to be marijuana was observed by the deputy. The deputy had defendant Black exit the vehicle and found additional marijuana on his person and inside the vehicle, and he was placed into custody for possession of marijuana. Homicide investigators then met with and spoke with defendant Black at the Harris County Sheriff's Office Homicide Division later that same day, read him his Miranda warnings, and he stated that he understood and that he wished to waive his rights and speak to homicide investigators. Defendant Black admitted to driving a rental vehicle during the shooting. He stated that LW was the only other passenger in the vehicle and was seated in the front passenger seat. He said that LW observed the complainant's vehicle near the Walmart on Wallisville near Beltway 8. Defendant Black stated that LW began firing out the passenger side of the vehicle, consistent with the projectile strikes observed on the complainant's vehicle. Defendant Black also admitted that the vehicle he was driving was a dark-colored Kia Sportage, which was a rental vehicle. He said he returned this vehicle the day after the shooting and got a new rental vehicle, which he was driving when he was arrested. Officers provided Defendant Black with a known booking photograph of LW, which he identified as Larry, the man who was in his vehicle shooting at the complainant's vehicle at the time that it was struck, and one of the projectiles struck the complainant and caused her death. Defendant Black told investigators that the pistol used in the shooting was at his residence. He signed a consent to search for the location, and investigators recovered a 9mm pistol, which was consistent with the caliber of shell casings recovered from the original scene.
Okay. And the basis for the stop of the gray Kia with Mr. Black in it was what again?
For making a lane change without signaling on January the 5th of 2019.
Right. Make a finding of probable cause. Mr. Black, if you consent, I can appoint a public defender to represent you at this hearing. Do you consent to that? Mr. Kundiger? State, what's your position on bail?
State's requesting that he be held without bail.
All right, Mr. Black, I'm going to set your bail at no bail for the time being. Personal bond not approved, obviously, with that. Are you going to be asking for a court-appointed lawyer when you get to the 176th District Court? All right, I'll make a note of that for Judge Harmon, the judge. You're a United States citizen? All right, sir. All right, sir, you may step to the left and go with the deputies.